Well, I enjoy playing the music. I enjoy the crowds coming in and enjoying the music. There's a great energy exchange out there. Whether it's me or whoever the entertainer is, people come a long way, pay a lot of money to see somebody they like. And when they come see me, that's great.
At Farm Aid, Willie Nelson and John Denver stood shoulder to shoulder, voices echoing for farmers and families across America. To fans, their friendship looked unbreakable, built on music, activism, and shared dreams. But behind those moments on stage, Nelson carried a truth he never revealed. And after Denver's tragic plane crash in 1997, that silence grew heavier with time. Now, at 92, Willie Nelson finally admits the truth about John Denver. What secret has he held for decades? And why is he choosing to reveal it now? Join us as we uncover the story he tried to keep hidden. The Quiet Bond. Among the many chapters in Willie Nelson's long career, one of the most overlooked is his quiet connection to John Denver. At first glance, the two seemed to come from different worlds. Nelson became the face of outlaw country, known for his rough-edged voice and defiance of Nashville's polished traditions. Denver leaned toward folk and country pop, with clear melodies and lyrics that celebrated nature, love, and simple living. Yet their paths crossed often, and a mutual respect grew between them. Throughout the 1970s and 80s, they appeared side by side at benefit concerts and television specials. Denver devoted himself to protecting the environment and wildlife, while Nelson fought for farmers and working families. Their performances together revealed a harmony that reached beyond style, even though they never recorded a studio album as a duo. For Willie, Denver's music carried something rare. He once said, Denver's voice held the spirit of the mountains, filled with sincerity that made every song feel like a gift rather than a performance. He admired Denver's refusal to bow to industry pressures, respecting his choice to remain true to his vision in a business built on compromise. That admiration deepened after the tragedy. On October 12, 1997, John Denver passed away at the age of 53 when his experimental aircraft, a Rutan Long-EZ, crashed into Monterey Bay near Pacific Grove, California. He was the only person on board. The official cause of death was multiple blunt force injuries from the impact. Denver was an experienced pilot with more than 2,700 hours in the air. He held ratings for single-engine, multi-engine, sea and glider aircraft, along with a Learjet certification. But at the time of the crash, he was not legally permitted to fly. A year earlier, the FAA had revoked his medical certification because of alcohol-related issues. Toxicology tests, however, showed no alcohol or drugs in his system, and investigators confirmed that impairment played no role in the accident. The National Transportation Safety Board investigation revealed that the main cause was Denver's inability to switch fuel tanks during flight. His recently purchased plane had critical design flaws. The fuel selector handle was placed behind his left shoulder, nearly impossible to reach while strapped in, and the gauges were located behind the seat, forcing the use of a mirror to check levels. Denver and his mechanic had discussed the problem before the flight and even tried modifications with vice grip pliers. But the issue remained unresolved. When Denver attempted to switch fuel tanks at low altitude to correct an impending engine failure due to fuel starvation, he likely became distracted and failed to maintain airspeed. This resulted in an aerodynamic stall, with witnesses observing the plane in a steep bank before it nosedived into the lake. The NTSB concluded that poor fuel system design, low fuel levels, and limited training on this aircraft type all contributed to the crash. For Willie Nelson, the loss was profound. Now, decades later, Nelson finally breaks his silence. He admits that guilt kept him quiet. Guilt that maybe if he had acted faster, a music project could have changed the course of Denver's final months. But Nelson also shared something deeper: his admiration for Denver's courage to sing about peace, love, and protecting the earth, even when critics mocked him. Willie confessed that John Denver's sincerity inspired him to keep fighting for causes bigger than music. He admitted that he carried Denver's death quietly for years, returning often to the songs his friend left behind. Take Me Home, Country Roads, and Sunshine on My Shoulders no longer felt like hits of another era. In a recent interview, Nelson revealed that he recognized in Denver a voice that seemed to hold the spirit of the mountains, a sincerity that gave every song a sense of gift rather than performance. Nelson also said that Denver's refusal to chase trends or bend to outside expectations left a lasting mark on him, who respected the courage it took to remain true to one's heart in a business built on compromise. Willie Nelson and John Denver never shared a record, yet their friendship was unmistakable. But while Denver's death left a lasting wound, it was far from the only tragedy Nelson carried in silence for decades: a father's pain. On Christmas Day of 1991, Willie Nelson's son, William Hugh Billy Nelson Jr., was only 33 years old when he took his own life. The loss struck without warning. To friends and family, he had seemed to be on steadier ground, but the truth ran deeper. Willie later admitted in the Paramount Plus documentary series Willie Nelson and Family that he had never experienced anything so devastating in his life. Billy was the youngest child from Willie's first marriage to Martha Matthews. His childhood was marked by turbulence, yet as an adult, he and his father found common ground in gospel music. In 1987, the two began recording a gospel album together, and Billy would sometimes step onto the stage to sing by his father's side. But behind the music, Billy was battling demons. By 1990, his struggle with alcohol had become overwhelming. He entered rehab, but the problem lingered. Police records showed multiple DUI arrests, and though friends described him as warm and hopeful, alcohol's hold never loosened. The holidays were especially heavy for Billy. Just 2 years earlier, during the Christmas season of 1989, his mother, Martha, had passed away. That same winter, his marriage to Janet Caldwell ended, and custody of their daughter, Ray Lynn, slipped away. For Billy, Christmas time carried the weight of loss and separation. His sisters knew well that he was fighting battles he could not escape. Lana said her brother struggled with depression, adding, "He didn't want to be depressed. He didn't want to be that guy. He tried really hard. He did." Susie, who was born just 17 months apart from him, remembered how close they had been since childhood. "We did everything together, but he had a lot of issues. They became more and more." On Christmas Eve, 1991, Billy was found in his log cabin in Davidson County, Tennessee, just after 2 in the morning. Reports later showed he was legally drunk at the time. Only hours before, his friend Buddy Frank had been with him, sharing drinks and laughs. Frank remembered Billy as cheerful, with a fresh haircut, new pants, and boots, as if getting ready for a new start, a sharp contrast to the dark fate that would take him hours later. The death of his son was so devastating that Willie could barely speak about it. Looking back, he would only say of that year, "Those were bad times." It was not only grief that weighed on him, but also a crushing schedule of shows, constant travel, and a huge IRS problem that threatened to take everything he had. According to Willie's manager, Mark Rothbaum, Billy often carried resentment over the way he believed his father had been treated. In their personal conversations, Billy always felt frustrated about how unfair life had been to Willie. Billy's tragedy silenced the gospel project he had begun with his father. Years later, Willie returned to it, releasing Peace in the Valley in 1994, which included Billy's haunting lead vocal on My Body's Just a Suitcase for My Soul. For Willie, it was both tribute and farewell, a way of giving voice to the son he lost too soon. Speaking of Willie's tragic life, let's rewind to the moment he stunned fans with a revelation about the hardships of his early years. Torment from the Cotton Fields, Willie Nelson's 2015 autobiography. It's a long story. My life caused a lot of controversy among readers with the painful truth of his childhood. His teenage parents left Arkansas during the Great Depression to find work in Texas. But life soon fell apart. His mother walked away shortly after his birth in 1933, and his father remarried and moved on. That left Willie and his sister, Bobby, in the care of their grandparents, two people already worn down by the struggles of hard times. Summers with his grandparents meant long hours in the cotton fields, the Texas sun burning Willie's back and leaving his hands raw. He dreaded each season, but singing became his escape. By 13, he was playing taverns and dance halls, earning what he could with the one gift that seemed to make sense in a world that had already taken so much. With his sister's husband, Bud Fletcher, he joined the Texans, a band that played in local bars and even earned a Sunday morning radio slot, but that was far from enough for the life he wanted for himself. In 1950, Willie Nelson enlisted in the U.S. Air Force, hoping for stability. Instead, after only 8 months, chronic back problems, left from years of cotton picking and field labor, forced him out. At just 20, his body carried the scars of a much older man, and his future felt uncertain. Back in Texas, he married Martha Matthews and tried to build a conventional life. But the home meant to ground him became another hardship. Martha's violence was relentless to the point that she once sewed him into bedsheets and beat him with a broomstick. What should have been a safe place left him bruised, humiliated, and alone. Music still pulled at him, but doors stayed closed. He recorded early songs that labels refused, drifted from job to job, and often went hungry. The most shocking part of this revelation was when Willie revealed that in San Diego, failure drove him to hitchhike north with no food or rest. With his body weak from exhaustion, he even slept in a ditch before climbing aboard a freight train. A passing truck driver, struck by his desperation, handed him $10 and carried him to Portland, Oregon. Even there, his estranged mother, who had abandoned him and his sister, gave him nothing. In Vancouver, Washington, he managed a spot at KVAN radio and recorded his first single. But when it failed, so did his hopes. Through Colorado and Missouri, he scraped by, washing dishes and playing for pennies. The weight of rejection grew so heavy that by the late 50s, he gave up on music altogether. He turned to selling Bibles, vacuum cleaners, and encyclopedias door to door, grinding work that drained him of strength and spirit. By this time, Nelson was nearly broken, his health was battered, his marriage brutal, and his dreams stalled at every turn until his long struggle finally paid off. Changing gears, signing with Liberty Records in 1961 brought Willie Nelson his first taste of success. Within a year, he had 2 top 10 hits and a debut album that proved he was more than just a songwriter. On the surface, it looked like his fortunes had changed. But behind the spotlight, his private life unraveled. His violent marriage to Martha Matthews ended in 1962, and though he quickly remarried Shirley Colley, the strain of constant touring and pressure followed him. The road took more than it gave, leaving him exhausted, broke, and often far from home. Even as he joined the Grand Ole Opry and toured with a new band, the rewards never matched the sacrifices. RCA singles charted modestly, but the bigger hits eluded him. Years of long nights, endless miles, and thin paychecks drained his health and spirit. By 1970, the money from songwriting was gone. His marriage to Shirley had collapsed, and in December, his Tennessee ranch burned to the ground. Watching his home turn to ash, Nelson took it as a cruel sign. Seeking refuge, he moved to Texas and briefly tried to step away from music. But even there, peace never lasted. When Shirley discovered the birth of Paula Carleen Nelson, his daughter with Connie Kupke, their marriage ended. He married Connie soon after, but the cycle of upheaval continued. In 1971, his single I'm a Memory offered a brief glimmer of hope, only to fade under RCA's grip. The label withheld songs, forced early contract renewals, and crushed his creative freedom. His concept album, Yesterday's Wine, was dismissed by critics and ignored by audiences. The rejection cut deep. Years of chasing success had left Nelson nearly broken, financially drained, physically worn, and emotionally spent. By 1972, burdened by failure and loss, he announced his retirement. The breaking point. The decision to leave music nearly broke Willie, but that pause became the turning point. In Austin, he found a scene that embraced raw truth over polish. At the Armadillo World headquarters, crowds cheered his cracked voice and unshaped edges. That acceptance revived him. His strength returned, and for the first time in years, he felt whole on stage. By March 1972, he stepped back into the spotlight at the Dripping Springs reunion. The audience was small, but the spirit of the gathering struck deep. Out of it came the idea for his own festival, the 4th of July picnic, where music, rebellion, and Texas identity fused into something larger than life. With health and spirit restored, Nelson returned to the business on his own terms. Manager Neil Reshin bought out his RCA contract for $14,000, freeing him to start again. Signing with Atlantic as their first country act, he cut Shotgun Willie in 1973 with his band, The Family. Its rough honesty cleared his voice for good. A year later came Phases and Stages, a painful divorce album split between a woman's side and a man's side, carried by the hit Bloody Mary Morning. Behind the music, he helped launch Austin City Limits, sealing his bond to Texas and its new sound. By the mid-'70s, Nelson and Waylon Jennings led outlaw country into the spotlight. Their 1976 record, Wanted. The Outlaws became the first country album to go platinum, while Nelson's own The Sound in Your Mind and Troublemaker soon went gold and platinum. Outwardly, he was unstoppable, but shadows returned. Reshin, his manager, had failed to pay the IRS, filing extensions without money behind them. Worse still, a cocaine package traced to Reshin's office brought DEA charges against Jennings. Though dropped, the scandal shattered trust. Nelson cut ties and placed his future in the hands of Mark Rothbaum, Reshin's assistant. Trouble did not relent. In 1977, Nelson and Hank Cochran flew to the Bahamas for a tour. When customs searched his luggage, the marijuana hidden in his jeans led to an arrest. Cochran bailed him out with a six-pack of beer for the jail cell, but freedom turned bitter. In drunken relief, Nelson leapt and fell, waking in the emergency room. Though the charges were dismissed, the judge barred him from the Bahamas for life. The late 70s sealed his place in history. With Jennings, he recorded Waylon and Willie, giving the world Mama's Don't Let Your Babies Grow Up to Be Cowboys. Then came Stardust, a daring album of old pop standards critics swore would ruin him. Instead, it became one of his greatest triumphs, selling millions and climbing the charts alongside hits like Good-Hearted Woman and If You've Got the Money, I've Got the Time. What began in collapse had turned into glory, yet danger lingered, waiting in the shadows. Success had not freed him. It had only raised the stakes. Willie's fight for life. In 1981, while swimming near his home in Maui, Hawaii, Willie Nelson suffered a sudden lung collapse. He was rushed to Maui Memorial Hospital, and a string of concerts had to be canceled. The scare was a harsh reminder of the toll his long-term habits had taken. Nelson had smoked 2 to 3 packs of cigarettes a day for decades, pausing only when his lungs became congested, then resuming once the symptoms faded. After repeated battles with pneumonia, he faced a choice: give up marijuana or tobacco. He chose to keep smoking, though he later moved to a carbon-free system in 2008 to protect his lungs from further damage. Nelson's health struggles came alongside financial battles. In 1990, the IRS seized most of his assets, claiming he owed $32 million. The problem was worsened by bad investments in the early 1980s. After firing his manager, Neil Reshin, in 1978, Nelson worked with the accounting firm Price Waterhouse, which recommended tax shelters that ultimately failed. The IRS rejected his deductions from 1980 to 1983, and penalties and interest drove the debt even higher. His lawyer negotiated the amount down to $16 million, then later to $6 million, though Nelson did not fully comply. To raise money, he released the IRS tapes, "Who Will Buy My Memories?" giving all profits to the IRS. Many of his possessions were auctioned, but friends bought them and let him rent them back for little money. He also sued Price Waterhouse for putting his money in illegal shelters, settling later. By 1993, Nelson had cleared his debts. Even as he fought for his health and wealth, Nelson faced legal troubles over marijuana. In 1994, the Texas Highway Patrol found marijuana in his car near Waco, forcing him to appear in court and miss the Grammy Awards. Over the years, he was arrested several more times for possession, including in 2006 in Louisiana and in 2010 in Texas, though fines and probation were often applied instead of jail. His body bore other scars, too. Decades of relentless guitar playing wore down his wrists, leading to carpal tunnel surgery in 2004. Following his doctor's orders, he canceled shows and focused on writing while he recovered, though his determination to keep creating never wavered. Health scares continued. In 2012, during a fundraising event in Denver, he was hospitalized for breathing problems caused by high altitude and emphysema. Fans were reassured that he was stable, but the warning signs were clear. By 2015, recurring bouts of pneumonia and emphysema led him to undergo stem cell therapy to strengthen his lungs. Despite these trials, Nelson remained resilient. From his ranch in Spicewood, Texas, to his retreat in Maui, he carried on with the same restless spirit that defined his music, refusing to let illness silence his voice. Do you think Willie Nelson and John Denver would have made a great duo if they had shared more songs together? And what's the rarest story you've ever heard about either of them? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed this journey, don't forget to like, share with other music fans, and subscribe for more untold stories from the legends of music.